Hi guys, Michael Califf, author of A Very Broken System, coming in once again on the horror stories I was exposed to. Well, basically the outright corruption I was exposed to at the hands of the Victorian system, law and order system, prisons, police, the lot. When I was asked to testify against a GEO employed prison officer from Ravenhall Correctional who got himself into some criminal bother, I became the system enemy number one. And when they started using, this is what I'm going to explain now, they started using one of the most expensive operations the Victorian police, have in their repertoire, in their arsenal, and that is the Truman Show Effect. So what happens is and I'll explain to you, I'm going to do a more all-encompassing podcast on the weekend, and we'll do a little bit of the math. And this is how disgusting it is, because you got to remember the crime stats in Victoria are disgusting. So although you can't blame the brave frontline police, you can't blame, for the most part, the police, but you can blame the police when it comes to resource after resource after resource being protected in this ego-driven nonsense that I was exposed to. And what I'm getting at is, so when they started playing their harassed games, get rid of this guy, not because I was a murderer, certainly not because I was a pedophile, a rapist, not because I was a drug importer or dealer, none of that, nothing like that at all. And all these resources were getting spent on me because I questioned their integrity. And when they started playing their games, I'm talking yuck games, like weaponizing sex offences, and I told them to go F themselves. Mostly down, when I say told them to go F themselves, down the lens of the surveillance equipment that they were abusing, by the way. Not to their face. That was half the problem. They were trying to goad me into lashing out violently because they knew they were equipped to deal with that. This is how disgusting it was. They knew they've got all the step-proof vests and all this type of stuff, but they weren't equipped to deal with somebody who fights their corruption properly. And that's what led to resource after resource getting thrown at me, Michael Califf, author of A Very Broken System, because I wouldn't bow down to their nonsense, their outright law unto themselves, their big boy harassment. Yeah, we'll show this guy. We'll break all manner of laws in the process doing it. And I'll give you an example of a Truman Show, and I'll point out the laws they break. So, for example, now you can sort of, and this is where it grew from. It grew from back in about 2005. The Victoria Police started justifying because of a thing called a gangland war. Now this is comical when you think of the amount of shootings and murders that Victoria is dealing with today. So these people caused all this. Their inability to do their job properly are responsible for the mess we're in today. Make no mistake about it. So yes, we need police. Yes, police are brave, frontline police, they're the best, great. But you have to have honest police, because the dishonest police are the worst. They're the worst thing than anything. It's definitely, that's well documented and well proven, and it's very, very difficult to get rid of. Corrupt police forces, it's well documented, it's hard to get that rotten culture out of them. Anyhow, so with me, what I experienced, because again, not because of criminality, because I was asked to testify against one of their own. And then when they started steering police informants, drug addicted sex workers, girls to me, and I knew what they were doing, I just started playing along with it. Two reasons. One, I wasn't really in a position at the time to do anything, because I was homeless, I was battling addiction, all this type of stuff. So I wasn't really in a position to fight it, if you like, for lack of a better way to put it. And two, because when I realised after the first occasion, when I realised what was going on, and you know, I'd be getting exposed to the same weaponized AI bot tactics while I'm in prison as I was when I was in the hands of the police, I realised this is pretty deep. I've stumbled into some pretty deep corruption here. So I'd go along with it. I'd just play nice, you know. If they steered a girl who was like too friendly or what, I'd just play nice. Oh yeah, you know, I'd just turn up talking to her, being nice to her. Just like doing the exact opposite that they expected, if that makes sense. So they would try and steer a girl into me to break down a friendship or whatnot, but I'd continue just being nice to her. So that then turned into like, oh, he won't leave this girl alone and all these type of lies. But anyway, so it's expensive, right? Aside the fact that they're turning blind eyes to, in one case, I saw, like, I'm talking about 3 litres of GHB, which is the equivalent to 3 kilograms of methamphetamine on a, you know, in a court scale. It's a grade A drug and it's 1,000 grams. So that's 3 kilograms of a grade A drug Victoria Police were prepared to turn a blind eye to, as long as this girl was prepared to go along with helping them eradicate this guy who would dare question them. I kid you not. So there's that aspect, but then there's also this aspect. What they do in a Truman Show, the old school version of it, is called dropping the wire. So, and just so you're well assured that, you know, this isn't made up or anything, you can see it in the Greg Lynn story. In the Greg Lynn story, Greg Lynn was a now convicted murderer who basically they didn't have much evidence to go off. So they had to pull out every single trick in their book to try and get Greg Lynn to get paranoid, to trip up and lead them to the body, the weapon, what have you. So what the homicide squad do is they've got this little Truman Show tactic. I'll just call it the Truman Show. I don't know whether they call it something, but what they actually do is they try and make a person paranoid. Now, again, I'll get back to the part where back in 2005, this came into play because of the gangland war. And, you know, you always hear the high-ranking police hiding behind, anytime anybody questions the legalities and the fact that, hang on, that's pretty questionable, they'll hide behind, oh, we had people dying everywhere. Well, it's laughable now, because if you look at us now. We've got literally 22-year-olds and 18-year-olds literally dying every few days. Like, it's madness. We've got 12-year-old kids dying every few weeks. So anyway, it's completely laughable that these high-ranking police, well, they can't even stick to the law. So anyway, what I'm getting at is, in the Truman Show tactics, the same thing they would have done to Pusey, of that I have no doubt. What they do, and they did to Greg Lynn, but you can half understand it, but no, you can't actually. If you can't solve a murder by adhering to the laws, if you've got to break laws to solve a murder, I suggest you go back to detective school. That's what I suggest. But anyway, that aside, let's stick to what they do. So I'll properly document it, my journey through the Truman Show. For about a decade I lived with that, on and off, because the times that I would get paranoid and trip up, I'd end up in prison for doing something dumb, like stealing a push bike from an undercover car park, or maybe walking out of 7-Eleven with a $1 coffee that I didn't pay for out of anger and rage at the AI bot that was doing my head in, or the continued aggravating harassment of a corrupt police force that was harassing me for a near on decade. So anyway, in that, what they do is they create this like all eyes on you. But how they do it is they do it by breaching your place. So they don't just do it by having stalkers genuinely stalk you. They also do it by having drug addicted and non-drug addicted gang stalker, like informants, street informants, joining in on the caper too, which is, think about that, they're not paid members of the police. In my case, they were often just like one-toothed meth heads. But here they are being brought into an investigation and told the inner workings of Michael Califf. And think about that for a bit of a like, oh, hang on a minute. Okay. So they have, through this little network of informants who aren't paid members of the police but are still brought into the operation and told about the target and the private life of the target. And then there's that aspect, but then what the police do, they'll breach your premises. In my case, for example, I'll give you an example. They've hacked your phone, they got your phone, and they do it quietly initially, obviously. And they knew of, for example, in my case, I'll give you an example. They knew that my father had just passed away and that I was arranging with my sister for my dad's car to be sent over for my brother. And yeah, you may as well throw the dad's TV in, Fiona. I'll have that. So, my sister. So they knew that dad's TV was going to be in this car on the way over. So what they do is they intercept that and they put their little gadget into my dad's phone, my dad's TV. My dad that passed away, that left me, thanks, ruined my TV over their incompetence. Don't forget that, not to solve crimes. So they put their little gadget into my TV. So it takes a little bit of like, hang on, how the hell do they know what's going on in my bedroom? You can't have surveillance equipment in a bedroom, which explains why they were so like a cat on a hot tin roof when they knew that I'd moved my TV into my bedroom. I had this one Mari who was clearly a police officer. You could tell she was making reference all the time about, you might want to move your TV out, because they knew the legalities of it. They knew what they were doing was in complete breach of surveillance laws. But they continue. They don't stop. They continue because they've got their little surveillance thing in the TV that I positioned in my bedroom. So I would be then what they do to make eyes on you, for example, say you come home and you put your keys here, they've got, now because the TV is in the bedroom, they know you've put your keys down with, so what they'll do is they'll be talking, try and wig you out. You'll be sitting at a cafe or whatnot, and one of their stalkers will be talking about how you put your keys on the cabinet on your left side, Barry, not to you, but talking loudly about something that is directly in your life, or you might have made your bed with a blue pillowcase. So they'll be just let it, hang on, that sounds, what? Are these people watching me? Like that. And that's the Truman Show effect. Anyway, I'll get into it further about the legal lines that get crossed by the higher officers of Victoria Police and how it clearly doesn't serve anybody, including their own, because it leads to Dezi, Freeman and Porpunkah. Speak soon.